podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Merry Christmas.
Hello, Merry Christmas, Ed.
Merry Christmas. What would you like for Christmas? Van Gaal wrapped with a P45?
No, I would like Star Wars Battlefront for PS4.
Is it any good? I've heard mixed reviews.
Yeah, it's all right. It's not supposed to be brilliant. It's quite limited, but I don't have tons and tons of times to play games when I'm not playing Rocket League. So yeah, I'd quite like that for Christmas. Maybe Assassin's Creed, although that is really supposed to be terrible. Yeah, computer games and designer board games. That's what I want for Christmas.
Very good. Little Ranter 1 is obsessed with the Lego game at the moment.
Right. Nice. Is that the littlest one or the biggest one?
The biggest one,
yeah. Right, so you number them in the logical order. That makes sense.
There you go. Very left brain of me.
Yeah.
So anyway, talking of left brain, Van Gaal is very much left brain. Not really working very well though, is it?
I mean, we're recording this on Sunday night. It's not inconceivable by the time you hear this, he's gone.
Not inconceivable. It seems unlikely, given Woodward's briefing that he's a genius. It would be quite a turnaround, wouldn't it? Although 3 defeats out of the Champions League, seemingly out of the Premier League title race. Oh, well, not definitely, but lost some ground. And you just wonder whether all the momentum's gone from Van Gaal. Talk of the players having lost faith in him, talk of them having taken to mocking him, in fact. And, not quite Jose-esque, is it? But getting there.
You mean Jose-esque in the sense of a full-scale revolution?
Having lost the dressing room, yeah.
I mean, isn't it? Has he not lost the dressing room? Does it not look like on the pitch that those players are miserable and not really playing for him?
Well, it does actually, yeah. I mean, so you pick out a few goals from the recent games. I mean, I guess we dropped the last podcast just after the Wolfsburg game, but it didn't actually include any commentary about the Wolfsburg game. So that was a very different game because that was quite an open game, as we thought. A very funny piece in Red News that the players had been briefed by Ryan Giggs, believe this or don't believe it, that Wolfsburg would be playing on the break. I was like, what? What? He hasn't seen Wolfsburg play this season, if that one's true. So very open game, kind of as expected, I suppose, because that's how Wolfsburg play. They do open the pitch out really big and create chances, and they create a lot of chances. But that wasn't the game I really wanted to talk about in terms of the players not playing. So 2 classic goals by Norwich in which players just stopped. So the first one in which Carrick is strolling and then suddenly realises he has to try and catch up with Jerome, and Fellaini's nowhere in sight. And the second one where Smalling does the same, and we've praised him to the hilt this season, rightly so, of course, but he absolutely stops for Tetty's goal, and
Young as well for Tetty's goal,
and young as well, who just stopped tracking back, and it's that kind of thing just gives you a little inkling that the players maybe aren't quite up for it, because that's some really basic stuff, that is.
Yeah, and the loss to Wolfsburg was like depressing in a way because Europa League, etc. This is a really terrible result in the scheme of things. But of course, that wasn't really where the damage was done. The damage was done in the home game against PSV. Losing away from home to Wolfsburg in isolation is not some sort of terrible, disastrous result. But then to compound that by losing away to Bournemouth and at home to Norwich is genuinely disastrous. This is an atrocious run of results. Of course, it's only 6 games, but even if you stretch it back, there's 3 wins that precede this run. But then if you stretch it back, you start to enter that run where there was 5 0-0 draws in 9 games or something like that. The kind of lackluster run has gone on for a long time now.
It has, and the questions that are being asked of Van Gaal are very legitimate about whether he's actually made any progress at United. And I mean, that one's pretty easy to answer, isn't it? No. And has he actually been a mistake, or has he been a disaster? It hasn't worked. Those are the other kind of questions that are coming up, and I think they're really legitimate now. And And someone accused me of being knee-jerk yesterday on Twitter. I always love that one because I didn't actually make any statements about Van Gaal being sacked or anything like that. But, 18 months in and £250 million spent, albeit, needed to refresh the squad and all of that, and quite a lot of talent went out. But still, plenty of money spent. He's trying to shape the squad in his own sort of manner, and it doesn't feel like there's an awful lot of progress.
No.
And that's pretty damning, isn't it, of supposedly a top coach?
I can't remember if we talked about this the last time we recorded a podcast, so I don't know if he'd said it yet, but he cited 1 round's further progress in the Capital One Cup as evidence of improvement. And I think...
Which is just, does he believe that when he actually says it?
Yeah.
Because no one else does.
No, because that's beating Ipswich reserves at home that he's talking about there. That's the great progress he's celebrating. And the current league situation, I'm pretty sure now we must be in a similar or worse position. I haven't looked it up, so this is terrible. It could just be not true, but I'm pretty sure we can't be in a considerably better position than we were this time last season now. I mean, league table numerical position or number of points wise. So it's not improving, and there's nothing knee-jerk about it. This is 18 months in. I mean, you could say, no, this is a man who had a 3-year plan, and we are at the 18-month point of his 3-year plan, and this is where it's meant to be. But he wouldn't say that. I mean, it was very clear after the Norwich defeat that he doesn't believe what he's doing is currently working at United, because it clearly isn't.
No, I mean, this time last year, 21st, 22nd December, United had 32 points after 17 games. So, yeah. So we're 3 points worse off after a big summer of spending. So, look, I mean, it's getting to the point where it's not as if you have to say, oh, yeah, I want Van Gaal out, but it's not been a success. And this is a problem for the hierarchy because, it's one thing firing the guy who came after Fergie because that was an impossible job and they made it more impossible by appointing David Moyes. That's just like tied both hands behind their back when they went into the ring. But now it's pretty embarrassing for Woodward to have got it so wrong again.
Absolutely. But I think that it's very... Because you said 2 different things. That's 2 different questions. One, was it a mistake appointing him? And B, has it been a disaster? And I actually don't think those two... I mean, they're not the same, are they? Because... yes, it's definitely in the process of being a disaster. I think that is kind of unquestionable now. But that doesn't necessarily mean it was wrong to appoint him, because football management, just like buying in players, there's always an element of risk in that. There's an element of risk in any managerial appointment, however kind of much of a natural fit it seems. But I don't think it was wrong to give him a go. I think that's actually it was a perfectly sensible, good decision.
Yeah, well, I guess so. I mean, the challenge, of course, is that within the time frame since Fergie left, Guardiola, Mourinho, Klopp and Ancelotti have all moved clubs. So, it's starting to look for a club that's supposedly the biggest in the world, a little haphazard. Managerial recruitment as well as their player recruitment, of course, and so there's a little dichotomy for United fans here, because it's easy to blame the manager, of course, because he's the point, and he's the likeliest to get fired when something goes wrong. You can blame the players, of course. Are they high enough quality? Are they really playing for the manager? And that would be quite criminal after what happened under David Moyes, of course. Mostly different players, but some of the same. And then the third thing is the hierarchy, and do they have the structure within the club that suggests that they can turn this around? And I think with all 3 of those, it's not a very pretty picture. The players are not performing up to the standard you'd expect from this group of players. The manager is not getting out of the players everything that they can give, clearly. And he's been very dogmatic about his systems and tactics and approach, which is pissing off the fans royally, of course. And then the management, the hierarchy, and especially Ed Woodward with this kind of really scattergun transfer policy, which basically involves calling Jorge Mendes on the 31st of August. They're looking like they're not fit for purpose. And this is really concerning, because it's not just now and 3 defeats. We're looking at some real systemic problems which could attach themselves to the club for some time to come.
I've recently had a football podcast recommended to me called Second Captains, which is an Irish football podcast. It's ever so good. I've only listened to a couple of episodes, but some really good analysis. And they did an episode on Liverpool's, well, it was a feature on an episode on Liverpool's transition from, top of the tree to a long period of mediocrity, and comparing it to what's happened at United over the last couple of years and pointing out just how quickly it happened at Liverpool. And I think that it is in that hierarchy where the biggest risk of that happening lives, isn't it? Because, whatever's going on behind the scenes with Guardiola, if it's actually true that United weren't trying to put themselves in pole position to get Guardiola because they were happy with Van Gaal or whatever other reason, this is the kind of thing where you just think, well, this is people that don't really know enough about football making these decisions.
Right, and it's a very glib thing to say, I guess. But of course, you've got 6 Glazers who really don't know anything about football, barely ever attend any games. Let's assume they don't watch too many, and they're not historically from this industry. Ed Woodward, who was a management consultant for many years before getting into football, and then you've lost the experience of Gil and Fergie from full-time management at the club. So there's a big hole. I mean, we've said this before, right? But if there's any club in the Premier League crying out for a director of football, a real fixer in the middle there, it's United at the moment. Good noises, I suppose, coming out of the club that they've kind of worked out that they've fallen behind in terms of the academy setups, and they're going to look at not only moving potentially the academy, but the whole setup. They still don't have an academy head since Brian McClare left. But that's one part of the club. The transfer policy is an unmitigated disaster, right? And it has been since Gil left, undoubtedly. It's so shoddy that it's clearly not fit for purpose. And the only part of the club that really functions well is the commercial entity. And that can only save United so far, because all this money piling out of the club in transfers isn't buying very much at the moment.
Was last summer an unmitigated disaster in the transfer sense?
So it was quite clear that United were missing a top quality central defender. Spent all summer chasing Sergio Ramos when it was patently obvious that he was after a new contract, and that they missed out on an experienced striker, and they let 4 or 5 strikers go, and left themselves with a kid, albeit an absolutely brilliant kid.
Oh my God, he's so good.
And Wayne Rooney, who's, I don't know what the opposite of absolutely brilliant is, but he's that.
Yeah, just very, very briefly, I don't feel in a position to say anything about any of the Rooney-related rumours that have been going around, because I don't know anything. I have no idea about whether there's any truth in them. So I guess we're just not going to cover them, right? Unless you've got anything particularly that you know about it.
I know nothing about it, and everyone who I trust says there's nothing in this. He's just injured, or was just injured.
Yeah, okay. He's still bad at football, though, isn't he? That's a bit of a problem.
Well, look, I mean, in a way, we owe Rooney an apology, because, we spent the whole season basically asking for him to be removed from the team, and it turns out United are crap with him and crap without him.
Yeah, Matt has been absolutely dreadful. My goodness. Someone that was at the Wolfsburg game told me that was one of the worst performances they've ever seen from a United player with their own eyes. He was terrible against Bournemouth, and he was pretty abject again.
I didn't think he was terrible against Bournemouth, but yeah.
In the entire second half of that game, he was. He
completely disappeared. I mean, he was in the game in the first half, but yeah, completely disappeared from the game in the second. He's one of the clique of players who is very unhappy with Van Gaal.
Right. Okay.
A lot the Spanish contingent, right? So he's not used in the way he wants to be, and he doesn't get on with Van Gaal's tactics, and he's just unhappy. I mean, at this rate, it wouldn't be a big surprise to see him go. Certainly next summer, you'd think, if Van Gaal makes it that long.
Well, or, of course, the other alternative, like Mata and his lads get it together and they get Van Gaal out of the club, and then the next day, hello, Jose. I'll pack my things, shall I?
So one way or another, he's off. But it's such a shame, because he should be United's most creative player. And look, we know what Matters about, right? And I blame him somewhat for his poor performances, but I mostly blame Van Gaal.
Right, fair enough. All right, so the actual football has been dire in a few different ways. Wolfsburg, one thing that's happened since we last spoke is United have conceded 7 goals, having really not really conceded very many before that. And it's pretty clear that the thing that was keeping so many clean sheets wasn't so much individual defensive performances, although that played a big part, but it was this ultra defensive structure which has sort of disappeared in the midst of a midfield injury crisis, really. And Fellaini charging all about the place in Wolfsburg. Against Bournemouth, the whole team just looking a shambles, and against Norwich, no midfield cover whatsoever for the defence. Against Bournemouth, I guess, very inexperienced back four as well.
It was, but it's clear that Fellaini is no defensive midfielder.
No,
right? He cannot or does not want to play that role, and he was actually quite dangerous against Bournemouth. But
yeah, it was our best player,
but
and
he just
created three.
Yeah, he created a whole bunch of chances, and it was quite bizarre that he was taken off.
Yeah,
but he left a big space open in United's midfield. Not that that's how Bournemouth scored the goals, of course. But you're right. You know, the whole structure has gone with injuries both in midfield and defence, and United were a bit more open in Wolfsburg. I guess you have to say they had to be, right? They had to go and win that game. The problem is that Wolfsburg are just a better attacking side than United, and you know, actually a couple of very good goals from Wolfsburg. So the first one that swept in from Naldo, very nice delivery and fine finish. The second one, absolutely brilliant from Wolfsburg, dancing through United's defence. Good goal from Martial to open things up.
Yeah,
you know, and actually United created quite a few chances in that game. It was just that Wolfsburg created more.
Yeah, I think the XG of the sides was almost identical in that game, and against Norwich, United had massively out XG'd Norwich.
But look, this comes back to what I said earlier about United missing a top-class central defender, right? So you can see what Van Gaal's trying to do. He's gone ultra-defensive in order to try and fix what he sees as United's biggest weakness, and to some extent it's worked, because for a while United were in the top 4 and in fact were top a couple of times this season. So, you know, from his point of view, he'd say that worked. So the injuries have forced him to change a little bit. United have gone a little bit more open, started creating a lot more chances, created a lot of chances against Bournemouth as well as Wolfsburg, not so much against Norwich. And all of a sudden it looked like a United side that could potentially score goals. But the stuff at the back was no good.
Yeah, it was no good. Bournemouth was just horrible to watch, wasn't it? We watched that match together. It was a rare opportunity to do so with a lot of United fans in a pub in the centre of London. Lol. But yeah, that was it was just horrible, and it felt totally inevitable. And in a way you could sort of say, okay, well, there's so many injuries and the squad's kind of down to bare bones, but then there's the instant counter argument of, yeah, whose idea is it to keep the squad so thin, right? That's a tactic, a deliberate strategic decision on Van Gaal's part to involve young players, and nice to see young players involved, but that there's a cost to that, obviously, when there's so many all at once.
Well, there is, and you know, when you play like young players, typically you don't want it to be away to a top German side in the Champions League.
Well, I was really talking about Bournemouth, but even then, and Bournemouth were on a little bit of a high, and it just felt like it was so inevitable that we lost that game. I have to say, I did not feel that it was inevitable that we would lose at home to Norwich City. That one,
but not shocking either.
Oh, I don't know. I have to say, I was pretty shocked that we lost that game, because we haven't lost at home all season, apart from that Middlesbrough game where he played Romero, so it doesn't count. I was genuinely shocked. Norwich haven't won away since the 15th of August. I think that is a pretty shocking result. United were 1-2 on to win that game with the bookmakers. So
lol, bookmakers. Haven't you seen United in the last couple of weeks? You fools. Yeah, well, look, Bournemouth, horrible. Just really, really horrible performance, especially in the second half. Just nothing from United at all. The bizarre sight of Nick Powell coming on yet again, this time for Marouane Fellaini. You know, in Wolfsburg, Mata wasn't great, but you'd think he'd be the man who might make a chance for United. And in fact, you know, he was involved in United's goal, right? The second goal. And then even bizarrer in a way, Fellaini, the man who's actually causing Bournemouth quite a lot of trouble, only comes from Van Gaal. Very odd explanation from Van Gaal as well. He basically said, well, things weren't quite working, so I had to make some kind of change. You know, for a man who's, as I said at the beginning, all left brain and logic, that just seemed a really scattergun reason for making a substitution.
And I think that actually the story of Van Gaal as a left brain coach is he's a complex character, and there is some nuance there, because he does have this kind of total human being philosophy, right? This is not a left brain principle. That's about seeing he's got a kind of empathic side and all that kind of stuff, but at the same time can be a sort of horrible bully. So he's a complex man, and there must have been something complex going on for them subs. The Powell for Mata substitution. It was a heck of a thing, that, wasn't it? It was a heck of a thing. It came out of nowhere, and you couldn't help thinking that really did look like a manager who was floundering. Van
Gaal's substitutions are worse than David Moyes'. Discuss.
I think you've posed that question before. It's a difficult question to answer. They don't, they're not great, are they? They've been pretty terrible recently.
Hey, and amid all the talk of who could replace Van Gaal, Moyes sitting there without a job at the moment.
Jesus, oh my God.
Yeah, well, look, they picked Moyes ahead of Jose once. Why shouldn't they do it again?
We all pack up and go home. It's going to be an FC United podcast a week after that, if that happens.
Yeah, FC aren't doing so well at the moment. Yeah, lost at the weekend, and they're sort of down the bottom of whatever it's called.
I've got one question for you, right? Is David Moyes their manager?
No, he's not.
Well, then they're all right, because I don't care how bad things get. That is always good news. The Norwich game was just dreadful. Hey, you know what, Ed? Guess what? United started quite brightly and looked fairly lively for the first 6 or 7 minutes of that game. Oh, what an amazing thing. And then they retrenched into a pattern of fairly unpenetrative possession.
70% of it, in fact, and 2 shots on target. Yeah.
Absolute Groundhog Day at Old Trafford, that first half.
I'm going to get a T-shirt made. 70%, 2 shots.
It is. That is the 81 crosses of Van Gaal's statistics, isn't it? It's this relentless possession and no shots on target. The first half was just totally dismal, like so depressing. After that little bright early spell, it's just like, oh, it's exactly the same game again, playing out before our eyes. But turns out it was not to be the same game, because actually this time we were able to be cut through on the break, and the opposition scored.
Yeah, twice. I mean, twice. And very, similar goals in a way. Some very, very poor defending from United and incisive attacking from Norwich. Deserved their goals, and you can't blame Norwich for sitting deep and breaking, because it's absolutely the right tactic to take against this United side, because that most of United's possession is going to be anemic. Interesting piece on Rant this week that one of the writers put up with some quotes from Guardiola, who's basically, they're from last year, where he's saying, look, this tiki-taka stuff's nonsense. It's not about that. It's about trying to create the overload. You're trying to shift the opposition out of position, and then you create the chance with that overload, right? Fair enough. And I'm sure Van Gaal would say exactly the same. The problem is it's so pedestrian most of the time, United's possession, that you don't shift the opposition out of position. Almost never. And it's just really bizarre that United keep plodding on with this. And maybe he just doesn't feel like he's got the players to change it around. But it's the same thing. Variations on the same thing all the time.
I have to say, I genuinely look forward to recording this podcast. The last few times, I really haven't, just on the basis of I don't have anything new to say about Man United's terrible football under Louis van Gaal.
No, that's right. We are being quite repetitive. I tell you what, let's talk about Anthony Martial, the one bright spot, because another fine goal against Norwich. Nice feet, and slammed it in to add to the one he scored against Wolfsburg, which was a bit more Henry-esque, wasn't it? Cutting in, finessed it into the far corner Very nice indeed.
Yeah, and it's good to see him scoring again after that little barren period. Yeah. You say nice feet. I think nice feet slightly underrates what a remarkable goal it was, because the penultimate touch, the touch that he sets himself up with, is absolutely exquisite. The way he kind of pulls it into his body past the defender, but far away enough from his left foot to be able to wallop it in the top of the net. It's just... his close control is just absolutely something else. Well, there was an amazing example of it against Bournemouth, wasn't there, where he ended up keeping the ball in spite of being lying on his back at one point during that move.
Yeah, it was almost Fellaini-esque, wasn't it?
We've talked about the Fellaini goal.
who fell on the ball and scored.
Goal of the season. So I wrote a 500-word column about why that goal was magical for you, Max, it last week. But when we were watching it in a pub, it just looked like he'd fallen over and then somehow it was a goal. But when you see the replay of it, it's a really remarkable piece of technique. And he takes this step, a full step on his knees, doing knee walking, and then half a step, which gives him just enough lift in his opposite leg to dig his leg out from under himself and tuck the ball home.
So what do you think's better, Fellaini's goal or Phil Jones's face tackle?
Fellaini's goal by miles, because Phil Jones's face tackle shouldn't really have worked. He didn't get enough on it. Giroud should still really have been able to do something about that. But yeah, Fellaini's goal was a work of art. And also, the touch that he used to take it round the on-rushing goalkeeper was virtually Martial-esque.
Almost. So Martial, who also won the, what do they call it, Golden Boy Award this week for the best young player in Europe. That will add, 10 or 20 million onto his transfer fee when he moves to Real next summer.
Yeah, we didn't have to pay Monaco anything for that, right? It's only when he wins the Ballon d'Or we're going to have to give him that money.
That's right, yeah.
It's pretty inevitable.
Just a matter of time, though, isn't it? Although not in this dog turd of a United side, to be honest. He's not going to win the Ballon d'Or in this team.
It's fine, though, because this team ain't going to last much longer, because Van Gaal is going. It's when, not if now, right? The only way Van Gaal doesn't go is if it gets remarkably turned around in a very short period of time.
Why
exactly.
Would it? The thing that could happen is that United go back to being, after some injuries clear up, United going back to being tight and just winning games 1-0 with 2 shots on target or something like that. That's the best case scenario for the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you know,
Christmas cheer, boys and girls.
The truth of the matter is that Van Gaal is simply not going to last, because since we spoke, I think there was the whole thing about Woodward briefing journalists that he was a genius, right? And the story being that Woodward said at some point in that thing, "I'm not getting emails like I did under Moyes," right? This is the story we've all heard. Of course, his email address was then put on Twitter by Reddish, and I suspect he's had quite a lot of emails since then.
Good old Reddish. Yeah, good stuff. Yes, I suspect he has. Woodward doesn't get anywhere near the level of criticism that he should do for the job that he's done in the core football aspect of his job. You know, he's got this kind of commercial thing all buttoned up, and I guess that's been much more delegated now to other people in the organisation, but he doesn't get the criticism, and it's because he's got this kind of open briefing style, whereas Gill said nothing to nobody, and Woodward takes his clique of journos down the pub and tells them everything, and he's good copy. Why would you kill that?
Gill is still at every game.
He is, yeah. He was laughing as well. That unacceptable behaviour from look morose.
Look morose, David. I can always see him.
What's happened to the Illuminati, because they are not working?
Well, no, but since he retired, isn't it? Since he left, he's like, no, there's no Woodward-arty. Doesn't even work. I wonder whether they'll bring in a director of football, but I don't think that seems that likely, because Ed Woodward is living out his childhood fantasy. Right?
And they couldn't do it with Van Gaal in charge. They couldn't do it.
But that's not going to be a problem, because I mean, we really are talking about when, not if, with Van Gaal.
So boot Van Gaal out, give Giggs a job, bring in a director of football next summer, then you know, and like revise some other structures, like the entire scouting structure, clearly, as well as the academy setup they already have in train, I guess. And then you might be on track to rebuilding the club in a modern fashion.
Well, you say scouting structure. The scouts did a pretty good job with bringing in the best young player in Europe this season, didn't they?
Well, the scouts being the agent they paid £10 million to. So look, United have no full-time scouts, and that's part of the problem.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea that was the case. Since when?
Since forever. It's, Fergie had his old boys network. That's how United did business, and their favoured agents. Now they don't have the old boys network, and they're not finding the gems anymore. It's, basically United's transfer scouting system is to call up their favourite agents. They paid £15 million in agents' fees this year.
So, this is a really stupid question, but when you start a game of Football Manager and you've got the backroom staff and United have got loads of scouts, who are those people?
Scouts?
Right, but not full-time. They've not, and this was under Ferguson, this was the same way.
No.
I'm shocked. I just genuinely never had no idea.
Right. So look, but the important part here is that it's recognised fairly widely in football that United are a bit archaic in their setup. David Moyes noticed it. I mean, the problem was David Moyes wanted to bring iPads and analytics and the kind of home farm whiteboard system in and dithered over everything. And maybe if Moyes had lasted, United would have got a modern scouting structure in place. The problem is we'd be like in 16th place alongside Chelsea if Moyes had lasted. So look, it's just one aspect of the problems at the club, and that's why I'm saying there are systemic issues as well as Van Gaal being a total disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is true, and I think absolutely that Woodward is someone that deserves more criticism than he gets, and I think this kind of you see it a lot with like young people on the internet doing like Leonardo DiCaprio memes of him chucking money around and all that kind of stuff, and it's this idea that Woodward is some sort of like baller who gets things done is very illusory, isn't it? That's a very limited version of the truth about him.
It is, yeah. So, will he get something done in the January transfer window and save United's season?
I mean, I don't know. There's one very interesting thing to talk about from the Norwich game, which was last time we did record a podcast, Ed, you talked about when is Ryan Giggs going to make his move. Looked to me like the last 20 minutes of that Norwich game was a bit of a move from old Giggsy.
Yeah, he's not one to I mean, he does like to stand around the touchline, but he spent the last 20 minutes out on the touchline with Van Gaal sat at the back, and I suppose you could play this as like Wally with the Brolly style, up there and shouting for no reason. But it felt quite pointed, didn't it?
It
Giggs
really
out
did.
there being the manager, Van Gaal at the back looking at his notes.
Yeah, he was asked about in the post-match, Van Gaal was, and he said, oh, well, it's fine. We did that also against Bournemouth, and he sometimes has to stand there to pass instructions. And it was like, Van Gaal said some very searingly honest things in that press conference. That was not one of them, because what Ryan Giggs was doing in that last 20 minutes is saying, look at me standing on the touchline at Manchester United. Don't I look like I should be a Manchester United manager, unlike this clown? Like, there's a totally uncynical reading of it, which is just he thinks the team desperately needs some encouragement and no one else is going to do it, so he has to do it. But I think that was a very cynical piece of visual imagery. He distances himself from Van Gaal, makes himself closer to the players. Like, it's just pretty obvious move, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Maybe he was telling Martial to get up front and bin Rooney out to the wings. We didn't talk about this earlier. So United's move to get out of this crisis was to stick their best player back on the wing.
Oh, God. I mean, he did score, of course.
He did, yeah.
But I'm not sure that validates it as a move. No, I mean and actually Rooney. He was asked about Rooney in the post match and asked about this thing of credits, and he said, "Yeah, I need to evaluate that." So it did sound like it might actually legitimately be the end of the road for Rooney.
Well, let's hope so. And one other thing I wanted to bring up, David De Gea's made a couple of mistakes. And, I mean, could he have done better with Jerome's shot? He palmed it into the corner, and he definitely could have done better with Bournemouth's corner that flew into the top corner.
Yeah, interesting that, isn't it?
Bring back Romero, that's what I say.
Well, maybe. Or is this players playing within themselves, should we say? You know what I'm saying?
Know what I'm saying? Get the manager out.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
So wait there. Are we saying, or are you saying you're hashtag LVG out?
This is the fascinating thing about this situation, because I've at no point really turned to being LVG out until the point at which it doesn't really matter what anyone says, he's going. Because he's going now. It might not be this week. It might be the end of this season or later this season. But unless he wins the league or puts some wonderful performances together, in which case that's great, this is just inevitable. That Norwich game was the equivalent of the Fulham game, or maybe the Olympiacos game, to give it a bit more drama for Moyes. It was like, this is sort of basically the point of no return, barring a miracle. And I think one of the problems with Woodward is that he's not likely to act quickly enough, perhaps, and that might leave us in a very bad situation in terms of the moving pieces on the chessboard of the managerial, the VIP lounge on the managerial merry-go-round, because Guardiola is now definitely moving this summer. Mourinho is obviously free, so anyway.
And Ancelotti's free, although apparently going to Bayern Munich.
No, he is going to Bayern.
Right, okay.
He's public.
But look, there's a circuit clearly of elite coaches, and United thought they'd bought one of those, and the circuit revolves around every 2 or 3 years, and none of them stay anywhere for any length of time, and United are hoping to get on to that train. I mean, the trouble is they got an elite coach who's maybe 10 or 15 years past his best, and the one time and one time only, folks, that Duncan Castle has actually been right.
I mean, maybe Van Gaal's entire career has been a litany of either triumph or disaster. It wasn't just he has done many wonderful things in his career since he totally failed in his second tenure at Barcelona. He's a manager that's always had disaster in him. I'm not sure that this is as simple as, he's now a man out of time and past the period when he could have done a good job, because I think in that first season there were some significant signs that he if things had fallen into place a bit better and if he'd been a little bit more flexible, it could have been quite different.
Perhaps he said at the weekend that he is a successful manager, and then corrected himself and said, well, perhaps was a successful manager.
It was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. That it was incredibly moving, because this is what I meant about searing honesty. He was talking about he was asked whether he'd evaluate his own performance, and he said, this has always been part of my philosophy. I'm a totally different coach to that I was 25 years ago, and I've always tried to adapt and evolve. That's always been the thing, and my philosophy is extremely important to me because, and it was almost a point of principle and trying to defend himself, saying this is why I am a successful coach. And then that was when he said, or I was a successful coach.
Yeah, it's a circle of life. He's Simba. He's off to go die.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to live a very nice retirement in the Algarve or wherever in Portugal. It's going to be nice, but I think that's going to be coming pretty soon. And it's not like Moyes, right? When Moyes left, I had one. You asked me if I was LVG out. When Moyes left, I had one overriding emotion, and that was relief. Massive, massive relief. I won't feel relieved when Van Gaal goes. I'll just feel sad.
Right.
What about you, Ed? What about you? Where do you stand? What's your position on it? Do you think he should get the boot this week, get someone in straight away?
I'm not sure that it actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, personally, I think United behind the scenes should be doing absolutely everything to get Guardiola. And yeah, right. It's the only thing that makes any sense if United is still an elite club. The problem is that the City have been doing the groundwork for some time. Although, maybe what we should all be doing is hoping that City win the league so they can't boot out Pellegrini.
They will, though. I think they just will. Anyway.
Because that's what you do. I mean, Bayern booted out Heinz for...
Heinkes, yeah.
It was Jupp Heynckes. Bayern booted out Jupp Heynckes because Guardiola was coming along.
He won the treble and they booted him out.
Right. And I guess City would do the same, And look, Guardiola is not going to be the next empire builder. No one is ever going to do a Ferguson again. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, well, we need someone who will be here for the long term. No one's going to be here for the long term. If United are on that train of elite coaches, they're going to do 3 seasons, maybe 4, if they're successful. or they'll do 2 or 18 months or 7 months if they're not.
So he just called David Moyes an elite coach. Would you replace Van Gaal with Mourinho tomorrow?
No, but you're making what?
Oh, not on purpose. I'm not.
No. I'm just saying, one would, if one does that, be giving Mourinho a 3 or 4 year contract and making the assumption that he's, and basically he is Van Gaal, just more successful.
Okay, so I guess my question really should.
So I don't want him anywhere near United. A personal opinion, and that's. It's kind of crazy, right? So if it's Mourinho or Moyes, you pick Mourinho every time. You fools, you absolute numpties. Yeah. But if it's Mourinho or Guardiola, it's no choice for me. It's easy.
Yeah. So I think I guess I should rephrase my question to ask what I really mean, which is if Guardiola's going to City, and this is all the word that United get, and all this kind of these rumours of a Ferguson charm offensive with Guardiola are not true, or it doesn't work, and he's locked up with City, the day that gets announced, do you try and get Mourinho in the next day?
Yeah, and because United would have no other choice at that stage, definitely. I mean, it would make for fun times, wouldn't it?
It's going to be an interesting podcast, that's for sure.
Yeah, it certainly would be. And, I mean, he's entertaining. I guess you'd call it entertaining Mourinho. I mean, the last 6 months at Chelsea have been really eye-opening, though, because, he's always been abrasive at Real, and to a lesser extent at Inter. He fell out with everyone, especially at Real. And what has happened in the last 6 months adds an extra level of risk for United. Because in the past it was guaranteed trophies. Yeah, he can be brusque and he's arrogant and he'd ride roughshod over Woodward probably. But he wasn't that cataclysmically, damaging from top to bottom, which is basically what Chelsea said, Michael Emenano, the effectively technical director, just laid it all out there and threw Jose under not one bus but 2 buses. He just destroyed him
under the buses that Mourinho had parked.
Yeah, well, that's right. They started rolling backwards or something, and just that would leave United pretty risky position to appoint him. Of course, given what has happened, they'd need to feel very confident that was some very unique circumstances.
But isn't that pretty much exactly what happened at Real Madrid as well? Like, this isn't a unique thing. And he did guarantee trophies at Chelsea. He won the league, and they hadn't won the league for ages, by their standards with the money spent and stuff. And so he guaranteed trophies, and then it all went horribly wrong because he's not a very nice person, and that eventually catches up with you.
Right, and it's probably what would happen at United too.
And I feel like if Madrid was in England, we would have heard an awful lot more. You obviously follow Spanish football pretty closely, but it's not on the back pages every day in the same way. But, he tried to poke someone's eye out, and not poke their eye out, but he poked someone in the eye in the touchline. And then he, he left huge schisms in the Real Madrid dressing room, which haven't healed to this day. Basically, the Ramos saga this summer kind of has its whole origins in Mourinho's time in charge and Casillas and all that kind of stuff. So he does just leave. He leaves the place like a baddie in an action movie, walking towards the camera while stuff's blowing up behind him, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, pretty much, right, and that's the reason why he is the last resort for United. But him or David Moyes Mark II, it's not a choice. United would need to go with the coach and try and put the structure in place to mitigate the disaster that would come 2 years down the line.
Yeah,
but I think what you're going to get with him, and a lot of it is not good.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I don't know, I always feel a bit like I'm being ridiculous to even make this point in 2015. But there is the thing of the one thing that has been nice about Van Gaal is he's looking to the long term. He, not for himself, but he thinks about the long term at clubs. And he has brought loads of kids through, and none of them would have played under Jose. It's like the whole sort of point of United is giving their own young players a chance. That's the one central thing about United that has some sort of value as a football club. And, you put Mourinho in, doesn't that just go? Isn't that just guaranteed to be over for however long he's around?
To be honest, I think it's just kind of happenstance, really, though. I mean, United have a small squad and Van Gaal's had to use some of those players. I think if United had got Ramos, McNair and Tuanzebe would hardly have played. And if Shaw hadn't been injured, others would have hardly played too. So, I mean, fine. Yes, he's played some young players. Yes, that's a kind of a history with Van Gaal, at least, I guess, we're at Ajax 25 years ago.
No, everywhere. That's just not
fine.
Fair.
Okay, fine. Look, and yes, he's done that, but it's not like there's such a structure in place for United to be successful with this. There's no guarantee that any of those players will actually ever make it at United. They've had games here and there. And, you say he's building for the long term. Well, maybe he is. Maybe. But, it feels like Van Gaal is so pragmatic, he's just doing what he can do to get through this week and next week and the week after.
But why do you don't sign Memphis and Martial if all you care about is this season, right? That's not where you invest the funds.
No, and no, I think that's fair enough. And but it's not binary. I'm not saying he doesn't give a about young players. He clearly has something about him that will play young players, but I don't think he's necessarily going, well, this is all for the long term. I just don't think it. Because if he really cared about some kind of romantic notion about this should be the way football's played, or this is the way United plays, and we're a club that promotes youth in some way, then there'd be a bunch of other stuff he'd be doing as well.
Yeah, and he'd be playing some of the better kids as well, like Pereira would get a game and stuff like that. Tom, there's a bleep in that last thing, in case you missed that one. But yeah, he'd be playing some different young players as well. He'd maybe play Pereira, who it's hilarious watching United warm up because Pereira's always on the bench. He always just does absolutely outrageous things with the ball in the warm ups. But yeah, anyway. Maybe you're right. Maybe Van Gaal doesn't care about the long term, but I think that the transfer policy and the transfer policy more than the kind of playing the kids in an emergency, although that still has some significance in itself because we go back to the West Ham game last season where Paddy McNair played alongside Marcus Rojo, and we both said at the time, I think, there's absolutely no way Ferguson would have played Paddy McNair in that game, right? Ferguson would have just played Carrick in the centre of defence. So I think there is some significance to having the courage to play the young players when the injury crisis runs in that direction.
Right, and that's the only risks he ever takes with the football. Yeah.
And this isn't a defence of Van Gaal, by the way. This is just a defence of Van Gaal above this particular aspect of Van Gaal as compared to Mourinho. And I do think the fact that there is absolutely no care ever anywhere in his career, as far as I can remember, for young players is a thing that makes me think, it's going to be a bit sad if Mourinho comes. Be nice when we win the league, though, obviously.
Yeah, with functional football and Mourinho poking someone's eyes out. But there you go.
How much is the functional football thing fair? Because Madrid obviously were not built around functional football by any stretch of the imagination. And
no, he had one brilliant, 18 months at Madrid where they scored tons and tons of goals. It scored like 110 in one game. One season.
One game. And then Chelsea, the first half of last season, were lovely to watch.
At points, yeah. So, sure, it's exaggerated and he doesn't always play bad football. He's clearly, the antithesis of Van Gaal when it comes to possession. He's quite happy to have 0% possession as long as it gets him the result. And I think that's the thing that people look at. They look at Mourinho playing anti-football when he needs and wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would obviously happen. But, Fergie played a lot of anti-football when he needed to and wanted to, didn't he?
During his last two seasons, yep.
Longer than that, 2008. That's a lot more than 2 seasons, isn't it?
Very true. And when it's pragmatic, that's what most coaches will do, and that's fair enough. Again, this isn't binary. This is not to say that Jose will only ever play anti-football and Ferguson only ever played 6 up front. Of course not. But the tendency and the arc of Jose's tactics, doesn't sit that well. But then again, this is what we've got at United at the moment. And there's no way the board right now are thinking, we must have a coach who plays open attacking football.
No. Although, wouldn't it just be a dream? So the Pep thing's interesting. So if we do line up Pep in the summer, do you think we should still sack Van Gaal now and give it Giggsy to the end of the season?
I've no idea. Would it? I suppose if they came to the conclusion that Van Gaal was actually damaging and the players had lost faith in him to such an extent that United couldn't get the results, then yes. If that's not the case and he's just not extracting enough out, there's no guarantee that Giggs does any better at all.
Yeah, I think that point is interesting. And in a way, that was the most telling thing he said after the game, which was that it's extremely important for a manager, a team to have faith in their manager. And when you lose results, that faith disappears game by game. And I think it does look like that it doesn't, like, I don't have any actual behind the scenes information other than what's in fanzines, but it doesn't seem, when you look at those group of players, that they have anything invested in Van Gaal.
Yeah, they don't, but no guarantee they have anything invested in Giggs either. Just because he's a club legend doesn't mean that they owe him anything or even look up to him. Who knows? We know nothing about Giggs. His coaching experience has come under Moyes and Van Gaal.
Yeah, but I don't think
he did watch Fergie for 20 years, but it doesn't mean that he's learned anything. Look at all the players that played for Fergie. How many of them have been good coaches?
And I don't know, maybe I'm just wrong about this, but I don't think that Moyes and Van Gaal are lumped in together as teachers of coaches. Like, it's not like Van Gaal is not still a good person to learn from as a coach, because he's on a totally different level of experience and insight to Moyes.
Yeah, well, anyway, we've gone off on a tangent, 15 different tangents. And
should we do some Twitter questions then, before we look at the festive
Let's
season?
do some Twitter questions, and then we'll roll into the 3 fixtures United are going to lose before we speak to you next time.
At Quatchet says, given the Liverpool result today, does this put some of our struggles in perspective? No one is really taking this league by storm. They lost 3-0 to Watford.
Right, no one is. Look, if you look at all the predictive models before the season, there's only real 2 mega outliers, and that's Leicester and Chelsea. And United are pretty much, fifth as it stands. So, a place below where most of the predictive models had United. So, it's not as crazy as people are saying. But sure, yeah, Liverpool are inconsistent, and we've praised Klopp. Maybe that was the kind of bump of him coming in. They got some very good results. They've had some very poor results recently. Getting smashed at Watford is a very poor result.
Yeah, absolutely. We beat Watford.
Wow, that's how bad that result was for Liverpool.
That's also the last time we won a game. That's mad, isn't it? If you'd thought at that time, we're not going to win another game before Christmas now, just would have seemed fanciful. But in fact, that's what's happened. At Anmol Bajaj 92 says, will there be any positives to take from Van Gaal's time at United, assuming he's gone by the time the pod comes out? He ain't going to be gone by the time the pod comes out. But Martial is the big one, I suppose.
Martial and I just spoke about the introduction of some younger players.
Yeah, absolutely.
Funny press conferences.
Yeah, he gave Christmas presents out last season. That was nice. I enjoyed that anyway. Talking of Christmas, at Gary_Dunn says Christmas pudding or mince pies. He says he's feeling festive knowing that we can't drop any more points before Christmas.
Good. I'm a big fan of mince pies.
Are you? I wouldn't have had you down as one. That's interesting. I love them. Christmas pudding's my absolute favourite, but I don't have any alcohol or eggs, so you can't find. Some years, some of the supermarkets do one which doesn't have any alcohol or eggs in it. That's brilliant, but they're hard to find.
Yeah, if you will have these funny diets, I like a Christmas pudding. That's all right. I prefer a mince pie with some brandy cream on it and a glass of brandy.
If you were to choose, would you just have the brandy?
No, I'd like all 3.
Nice. That's lovely. That's a lovely Christmassy image, Ed.
You need something to wash your mince pie down with, don't you?
Well, Santa Claus certainly does. At Angie LD9 says, because we haven't actually addressed this, Do you think we should even give Giggs a go? He's been part of 2 failed management teams now. That's what you said. And I find it very difficult to imagine giving a Giggs a go for any length of time. I think it's just a mega, mega risk, isn't it? I guess I'm going to slightly rephrase the question, all right? Who do you think from here on out, with the current squad as it currently stands, is more likely to get us into the top 4, Ryan Giggs or Van Gaal?
No idea. There's no evidence for either. I mean, I just don't know. I have no idea what Giggs will bring as a manager, as a leader. I mean, it's got to be different than as a player. So, I just don't know. Yeah, sure, he's been part of 2 failed management regimes. Again, that shouldn't really sort of reflects on him. Sort of, but not fully, clearly, because he's not in charge. I don't know what he's going to bring as a manager. We'll see. When Gianluca Vialli was appointed manager at Chelsea, Trapattoni said it was like putting a learner driver in charge of a Ferrari. And this would be the same thing, although, albeit a broken Ferrari. That was last successful quite some time ago.
At Eddie Rose 13 says, which player would you want to get Secret Santa for Secret Santa, and what would you get them? £10 limit. I think I'd like to get David De Gea, and I would give him the David De Gea puppet from Paul's house.
Very nice, very nice. I would buy Juan Mata some nice woolly hats and gloves, because I think he's going to need them.
Because he's out in the cold, is that what you're saying? When Mourinho rocks up. Talking of Paul's House, bit.ly/Paul's House 4. If everyone listening to this could please watch that would be very, very helpful to me. Thank you.
This time is personal.
Yeah, this time it's Christmas. All puppets, all Christmas.
Do you still love Christmas?
I love it so much, man. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I'm going to go for another Christmas question. Why not? If you could give any Christmas present to or for the fans, asks Derek_Anderson_, what would it be? Can you fit attacking football under a Christmas tree?
I'm not sure you can. I mean, you can't really wrap it, can you? It's more of a concept.
Thomas Müller has signed a contract to 2021, so that's out. Neymar?
Yeah, not going to happen. I mean, he's got about 15 different court cases and different, contractual situations he's got to get out of.
Plus, he's at the best football team in the world by a mile, playing with, 2 absolutely unbelievable forwards who he appears to adore.
It seems unlikely. I think, actually, the only scenario in which United do get Neymar is that it gets really litigious with the transfer to Barca, which it could do still, and it would clarify it for United just to buy all the contracts out or something like that. Yeah.
But that's not going to be in time to get him under the Old Trafford Christmas tree, is it?
It's not. It's never going to happen. I was coming up with a fantasy scenario.
I think maybe I might get them some sort of perspex that separates off the away fans from K-Stand, so some soundproof perspex, because it's just absolutely must be exhausting for the fans near K-Stand. Just hear relentlessly the same chants every week. Norwich fans were bad, considering their team won. I was having this conversation with Chris Vokes from Goal.com after the game, and he was saying West Bromwich fans by far the worst this season. But I think Norwich fans, considering their team won, have to be in with a shout. It was just they were silent for long stretches of the game, and it was all "we support our local team," all that malarkey.
Yes, they were singing songs about José Mourinho taking Van Gaal's job as well. That was slightly amusing.
They were that was quite good.
Talking about fans, there's an interesting set of fans at Stoke, and that's where United play on Boxing Day, or to be more accurate, that's where United lose 2-1 on Boxing Day. What do we think about this game?
I don't know. If Van Gaal's the manager by then, I don't think we're going to win, and if he's not the manager, I think we probably will out of new manager bounce. Not that would be necessarily sustainable, but they've got all their little buzzy. They're the new Stoke, aren't they? Stoke 2.0.
They are the new Stoke. Yeah, they played decent football. I mean, played very well when they beat City a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, the weather's not going to be terrible, right? There's not going to be any white Christmas this year. It all looks very mild around the country, so not going to be. But then if that wind gets up at the Britannia, oh my goodness, anything could happen.
Yeah, it might stop Shaqiri from actually playing decent football, and
they're going to have to fill in the corners, aren't they? That's what his going to happen at the Britannia now.
I know. Let's just hope the wind's behind us when we lump those diagonal balls at Marouane Fellaini. God, the tables are turned, haven't they? You know, just hoping we can play some percentage football at Stoke.
I find this game extremely difficult to predict beyond, well, not so much to predict as to say anything other than, well, I think what is going to happen is United are going to like have quite a lot of possession and Stoke will sit deep and hit them on the break pretty effectively. Like,
yeah, that's probably what's going to happen, yeah. And it's really, will United take any chances? So quite unlucky with one of the penalty decisions at the weekend, I guess, against Crystal Palace, and lost to a really stunning strike. But before that, they'd got a decent draw at West Ham. They'd beaten City and they'd beaten Sheffield Wednesday in the League Cup.
That game against City, they were incredibly impressive. If they can turn anything like that style on against United, we're just in trouble. Because United haven't turned the style on since Everton, and Everton were very bad in that game. But yeah, that was the last time we were good. So the chances of us being good any time over the Christmas period seem extremely limited.
All right, then on to the home game versus Chelsea. This is going to be an interesting one. Will Jose be Manchester United manager by then?
Mourinho taking on his old side.
God, I mean, Look, just to repeat, I don't want Mourinho anywhere near Old Trafford, but it would be quite interesting for Chelsea fans to be singing about their hero as he walks out of the Old Trafford tunnel as Manchester United manager.
It's just crazy, isn't it? But anyway, yeah, I don't know. A resurgent Chelsea against a feeble United on the 28th of last year. The Christmas period was brutal under Van Gaal, wasn't it? He just kept talking about how it was a fight for life against Tottenham Hotspur. Played very well in the first half of that game, but then we played Stoke over that period as well, didn't we? That was a really bad game from both teams.
Yeah, Chelsea played Watford in form. Watford up to 7th before facing United. So, not necessarily an easy game for Chelsea, but they've got that kind of freedom back again. You could see at the weekend, couldn't you, against Sunderland, they suddenly started playing some good football again. Yeah,
that was easily the funniest thing Chelsea fans have ever done, was like take up chants against their players after they scored goals.
I mean, the very definition of plastic supporters.
I mean, kind of, but in a way, they're not really being plastic supporters, are they? They're standing for something. They're standing for José Mourinho and principles against the three rats, Lazard, Cesc and Kostal, as that sign said.
Yeah, very good. I mean, I'd take Hazard if they don't want him anymore.
Yeah, he can come and betray our manager. He can come and stab Ryan Giggs in the back in like March or whatever. I've got nothing interesting to say about any of our games that we're supposed to be previewing. I feel really bad about that. I mean, nobody knows what Chelsea are going to be like in a couple of games' time. Nobody certainly knows what Swansea are going to be like, another team with a new manager. Maybe Gary Monk will be United manager. After all, Van Gaal was full of praise for him. Said he voted for him as manager of the season last season.
Yep. They're still managerless, aren't they, Swansea? United play them on the 2nd of January. Having lost 5 games in a row, will Van Gaal still be manager by the 2nd of January?
I mean, if we've lost 5 games in a row, surely that will just do for him there and then. You've got to imagine.
Yeah, probably. I mean, look, it's interesting. United can't have had on paper at least, a Christmas period, A, not that busy Christmas period, and B, one that looks quite easy. They played the 11th, 15th and 18th place sides.
That's right, Ed. That's absolutely right. It should be a doddle. I mean, it's kind of a busy Christmas period, isn't it? Because they've still got to do the game 2 days after the other game.
Indeed, yeah, but just, not so bad. There's not one between the 28th and the 2nd of January. Often they're playing on the 1st or no. Well, yeah, no, they have done in the past, yeah.
No, they do, yeah. Well, we went to see them lose 4-1 to QPR on the 1st.
That's how old we are. Yes, work that one out, folks. Were you born then? Probably not.
No, gosh, demographically, probably not.
So away at Stoke, going to be a tough game for United, undoubtedly. I mean, for very different reasons. They're a good footballing side, and it'll be a pretty even contest, I suppose. Home to Chelsea, revived Chelsea. They've got the players to make that a real game for United, and they've got players who can play on the break as well, in Hazard and Oscar. Costa is a very effective number 9 when he's playing. And injured and not being a prima donna, which isn't very often. And then Swansea, well, they've come and beaten us at Old Trafford a couple of times, haven't they? So you wouldn't expect them to be in high spirits, but you never know.
No, absolutely. And I guess that what I'm going to ask, rather than us just predict all these results, because it seems a bit of a futile exercise given how much can change over the next 2 weeks, is by the time we next record a podcast, if we don't record a podcast at all over the Christmas period, will Van Gaal be United manager next time we record a podcast?
Yeah, I think he will be, but I don't think the results are going to be that great. So I think United will draw at Stoke and draw with Chelsea and beat Swansea.
Okay, I think that's wildly optimistic, but I think we're going to lose to Stoke, lose to Chelsea, and draw with Swansea.
Wow. I mean, look, if there's that set of results, Van Gaal is not manager next time we record.
No, absolutely. So we'll see. It's all going to be quite interesting. Thank you very much for listening to the Rantcast in 2015. We hope you've enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed doing it. And we'll be back in 2016 with more podcasts. Have a lovely festive season if you celebrate at this time of year. I hope it's safe and peaceful and happy. And I hope that you all have lovely 2016s.
Yeah, thanks for listening. It's been an interesting year, hasn't it,
Yes,
Paul?
certainly has.
Sort of interesting being one of those very English words.
Yes.
Which means not very interesting at all. But yeah, it's been great to have you with us. Sorry for not recording a podcast for the last 2 weeks. Sorry that we're not going to record another podcast until after the new year, but there's plenty of football to talk about when we get back. Could be quite dramatic. And if Van Gaal gets sacked in the meantime, we'll do a special.
Yeah, we will, absolutely. And massive thank you, as always, to the fantastic, peerless Tom, who does such superb work to get this podcast out to you guys. We will be back in 2016.
The force is strong with Tom.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.